How important is research to national development? And this is very, very important to Africans.
Mm-hmm. It is critical. Again, Nana, in his lecture, gave the incredibly important direction when he said, it's about the questions you ask. What type of questions are you asking?
Absolutely.
What is informing that question? Moreover, what are your intentions for the questions?
Yeah.
Period. And if we don't question the question, right? Or as my husband likes to say, who is investigating the investigator?
Absolutely.
I think that the questions are important that we're asking. But maybe it's time to stop asking the questions and just getting behind the women who are doing it.
Right. There's a quote you made during your presentation, and I'm going to read it, and I want you to expatiate on that a little bit. And then there are two of them that I've noted. You said, for Africa to advance and become the world leader it's always been positioned to be, we must develop our young women as leaders. What did you mean by that statement? Let me welcome you to Channel 63, the channel that looks at issues with respect to Africa and what Africa can become by 2063. And today we are very privileged to be hosting one of the finest professors on the globe. And I'm talking about Professor Candace M. But I'm going to ask her to give you detailed introduction about herself, who she is, what she's done over the years, and why she's in Ghana. Prof, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Day-Tumi. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
You're welcome.
Indeed. To all of our colleagues joining us today, I am so honored to be a part of the discussion.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to have all of my formal education in the United States. And through that work, learned the importance of how to support college students as they journey through their college education. So my formal education is in what we call College Student Affairs Administration. And so I prepare, through my work at the University of Maryland as a faculty member, future higher ed administrators, both on the master's level and the doctoral level, to help support the academic mission of their institutions.
Interesting. And what has been the experience so far and the impact?
The experience and impact has been great. Well, first of all, Dr. Day-Tumi, I never have to leave college. So that is exciting. Wonderful. In part because you're always surrounded by new and creative, innovative ideation happening around you. With young people around you, you can't help but to be exposed to new ideas and new ways of thinking. The impact is quite great because as a profession, student affairs really helps the academic mission of higher education to come to fruition. And so by supporting the learning outcomes of students, providing them with the understanding of how they develop during college, supporting, their mental wellness, their understanding of how they build social relationships, all of those things help to build a more positive citizenry. And so the impact is quite great. This work has been formalized since the early 1930s in the United States. And the work of student affairs as a profession has really grown globally. Around the world. And that is what it has brought me to Ghana. The opportunity to work with higher ed professionals, both faculty and administrators, to understand what do college students need here in Ghana as they are going through university. In what ways can we support them? How can we give them the tools they need to start to develop as thriving adults? And particularly, how can we do it in the cultural context of Ghana? Ghana has a rich culture, and how people even engage with one another, how they help one another, the ways in which they provide support. And if we can lean on that culture as our basis for our philosophy of work, then we have essentially provided student affairs in a culturally conscious way here in Ghana, not just carbon copying from the United States to apply it here.
Interesting. Now, as we were talking, a lot of things were going through my mind, but let me ask you. So you're currently in Ghana.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about why in Ghana at this particular point in time. This is not the first time.
No, it's not.
So you've been frequenting Ghana. Give us a sense of, you're not a Ghanaian.
No, I'm not.
So what brought you here besides academic work?
Sure. I appreciate the question.
I want to contextualize it.
So there are two very central reasons as to why I'm here in Ghana. The very first being my partner, my husband, who does identify as Ghanaian, who grew up here, was educated in the school systems here, and also went to university here. So even engaging with him and understanding what has life really been like for you before you decided to travel and move around the world, right? That has been quite enriching. And the joy of being able to essentially come home, Dr. Day, to me, and see friends and family on a regular basis. I am blessed to be able to do that with him. The other entry point is through a dear colleague. Her name is Dr. Cynthia Dillard. She is currently the Dean of the College of Education at Seattle University in the United States. At the time, we were on the same faculty at the University of Georgia, which is in Athens, Georgia, in the southeastern part of the United States. She herself was hosting a study abroad program and invited myself as a junior faculty member at the time and another colleague to join her in Ghana. It was upon that entry that I understood that my professional life and my personal life truly could come together in a very meaningful way. And I liken it to a spiritual awakening, truthfully, to understand just how important it is to build not only collaborations and partnerships with colleagues here in Ghana, but to sustain them. Right? You know, you don't want to come in and just kind of do one thing and leave. It's about the relationship building. It's about working through conflict and understanding some cultural differences. And it's also about acknowledging that we all have a stake in this. In order for us to see a more cooperative global society, we all have a role to play.
Interesting. Now, so let's now look at why we are here this afternoon. I want us to take a bit of, if you like, a comparative analysis of what's happening in the United States and your experience in Africa with respect to the next generation and where you think the youth are heading in terms of what's happening at the global level. What has been your experience? Where you've been to, when you come to Ghana, for example, and you look at what's happening in America, what is happening in Ghana, what do you make out of?
Well, what I will say that we know statistically about the continent of Africa is that the majority of our young population for the entire world is sitting right here. Literally right here. And
in Africa?
In Africa. The entire continent. And that in itself is a great wealth in not only impact, but an ability to truly shift and change the narrative. Through the work that your organization is doing, not only powerful, but incredibly intentional to acknowledge that not only are they present, but to empower them, give them the tools necessary so that they are able to apply that. So my observation has been that our young people, particularly on the continent, are not even aware of that. They are not even aware that they are sitting on the precipice of true change, and that they themselves are the guiding force to make that happen. So your work is important, not only from an educated kind of make sure that they know standpoint, but again, to empower them.
Absolutely.
What I have observed, particularly in the traditional emerging adult age of 18 to 22 in the United States, are that our youth, although very enthusiastic, very innovative, in many ways are also somewhat entitled and feel as though I am owed kind of the next step of progress, whatever that may look like. And that comes with a lot of cultural socialization that has been instilled over the generations, right? This understanding that as an American, I have inalienable rights, and therefore even that expands to my education outcomes. I have rights to get a certain outcome that I'm looking for. And so in many ways, they view university education as a pathway toward career, not necessarily about developing critical thinking or seeing it as an opportunity to explore new ideas as higher ed once was, maybe some 60, 70 years ago. And so because we've really commodified higher education, our young people just see it as a pathway, not necessarily, or just a step, not necessarily an opportunity to explore further. My caution to our higher ed community, not only in Ghana, but across the continent, is to really envision what we do in higher education differently so that we can get to the point of empowering the youth through tertiary education.
Right.
It can certainly start in primary.
Yeah, but tertiary is critical.
Because at that point, you're starting to understand more about who you are, what your values are separate of your parents. You are starting to make sense of your own integrity. You're placing your own moral compass on your decision making. And so we have the opportunity to influence that at that level of education. And so if we don't just move students through just to get them into a career, but spend time actually giving them the tools to critically think, to problem solve, and to be compassionate leaders, I think that we have an opportunity to contribute to the shift that we hope to make.
Absolutely. Let's dive a bit deeper into that. What do you consider to be the criticality in terms of higher education to national development, and for that matter, continental development? In one of the things you said at the inaugural lecture was looking at the role of women for the advancement of Africa's development, if in case we get women in leadership roles and all of that. So let's look at it from an educational standpoint. And this is very, very important because, like you alluded to, you have a continent that promises to be, if you like, the provider of labor by 2040 to the entire world. How is higher education or tertiary education so critical in that process?
Absolutely. I think that the criticality piece is around who do we deem that should have access to this type of education, and more importantly, how are we developing them during that time? So in the inaugural lecture that focused on women in particular, women are a very important component of being able to, serve as the catalyst, but not just women. Thinking across various ethnic groups, thinking across various religions, thinking across various forms of identity. When we start to acknowledge that from my viewpoint of the world, I will speak for myself as a Black woman who's Christian from a privileged background of education, having earned a PhD and serving in faculty, I see the world from my own critical lens.
Perspective, yeah.
So the criticality that we bring is by bringing in a diverse population of individuals to have access to tertiary education, because they start to bring in literally by themselves, by each person, bringing in that viewpoint that may challenge something that you have not seen, or may affirm something that you haven't had exposure to, but through their worldview is giving you greater access. It is the meeting of the minds, if you will, but also the meeting of various backgrounds that allow for people to then grow and understand that as much as we might be different, we also are quite similar at our core, wanting our families to do well, wanting to do well ourselves, identifying that there is a contribution that we can make, and wanting to do it in a meaningful way. We may want to do it from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have an opportunity to gather in spaces like tertiary education and be supported by faculty and administrators that encourage that type of discourse and push us to go beyond kind of the norm, or for that matter, what is the prescriptive kind of approach to education, then we have an opportunity to gain that push, empower them, and actually create an environment where people are constantly looking for what is new and not settled in kind of the complacency of, well, I've accomplished this, so the status quo is okay. And that then informs kind of the push for governmental change. Because if I am starting to advance my own knowledge, I am encouraged by those who are around me, I'm now starting to question the status quo. And not questioning it for the purpose of being disruptive solely, but questioning it for the purpose of understanding how can we shift to truly improve for whatever community we are identifying. If we look at the youth here today in Ghana, they are doing just that. They are looking at circumstances. They are identifying critically, how is this impacting myself, my classmates? And I want to understand then what policy is then creating the, kind of impact that is impacting my circumstance. Can we shift that policy? So I'm going to leverage my voice. I am going to start to communicate with political, figures, to say that we have to do something. And that comes by way of acknowledging I have the ability. I am empowered. I can use my voice. We can use tertiary education as a platform to give them the tools necessary to continue in that same effort.
Now, it's interesting the angle from which you come in. But since we are talking about Africa within the global context, let's look at the aspect of culture. My daughter just left on Monday to go back to the United States after her marriage. And she tells me, Daddy, as soon as I arrived, the next morning I have to go to work. You come to Africa, it's different. Somebody has a wedding and he can spend about a week or a month without even showing up to work. So to what extent does culture, much as we're talking about education, to what extent does culture actually play in youth development, in this futuristic thinking, creative thinking, and all of that from your perspective? And I'm asking this question because as we all know, not only does Africa have great resources, but a critical component of these resources are the people. And the people, majority of whom are young people. However, we all accept that our culture has not helped us, to some extent. There are good aspects of the culture. And of course, we all accept that going forward, globalization has affected a lot of the obvious. But where you said, as an academic, as an educator, how much does culture play in development, particularly human resource part of it?
Oh, I think it is the driving force. There's a colleague of ours who is at the University of Ghana, Legon. Her name is Dr. Sarah Dagboji. She is in the fine arts department, and she has spent an entire career around the importance of storytelling. And what the youth can learn, not only the lesson in the story, but truly the craft of telling a story. And what she argues is that culture is philosophy. And in that philosophy, that's what then sets the norms. That's what society then grapples and holds on to and has expectations of you and me. Moreover, it then ultimately informs our policy, our laws, and then the ways in which we then govern ourselves. So culture is incredibly important. I think that there is a distinction between our youth and the generations before them around how much of their culture they want to influence their next step or what they're doing. I would argue that the youth of today are actually intentionally making decisions about what they want to carry forward versus what they don't want to. Whereas generations before them, I think, felt an obligation to continue to carry culture forward.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what that break is. I don't know what that dissonance is. I don't know why youth are intentionally deciding, yeah, I'll take this, no, I won't take that, differently than previous generations of, I'm bringing it all. I must bring it all. We must make sure we carry it. So to that vein, it has a great impact because if we, for instance, culturally have a understanding that if one eats, we all can eat. Yet, if the next generation decides, well, I'm the only one that's going to eat, then that impacts their viewpoint and how they approach policy decisions and informs why they would even consider their fellow neighbor or not. So it's incredibly important. I think that going back to what Dr. Dagboji is asking us to do is, how do we involve youth in the importance of culture? We do it through storytelling, and we offer them an opportunity to see the value in the craft of it, and also how in developing the story, you are learning the lesson that you can continue to carry forward. It's almost as if how comfortably young people find themselves with watching a telenovela or watching any other soap opera type or reality TV type program. All of those are scripted.
Right.
All of those are crafted,
Right.
just like stories are. And so if we can involve them and encourage them to learn from culture, that then continues the evolution of bringing it forward instead of distinctively deciding, oh, I don't think I really want to move forward with that part of my culture anymore.
Right. Interesting. One of the things that have been a major concern for us as Africa is the issue of media and technology. Today, if you look at, as you mentioned, the youth decide what they want to take out of culture and what they want to carry on and all of that. And largely, all these things are influenced by media, particularly social media and all of that. What do you think African governments can do or must do with respect to technology and media to be able to govern as the younger generation, not only to be patriotic, but also to be more creative positively towards Africa's development?
Well, we have to first stop telling the stories that the West tells about us.
Is it possible?
It is possible.
How?
Nana shared it with us in the inaugural conversation.
Lecture.
Yes. Sure. We have the ability to tell our own stories. And if our media is not telling it from our perspective, rather relying on the Western viewpoint and then just kind of simply reporting what they have reported about us, then we are almost feeding ourselves this false narrative that is not true.
But the question is, Prof, why do you think the media in Africa is not only seeing the need to domesticate, to Africanize the way reportage is done, but we still continue to follow the script from the Western?
Because it's how we educate, Doc. So those same journalists, those same media personnel and industry, they are educated in our institutions on the continent.
Right.
But the curriculum that we're using in those institutions is based off of the West.
Yeah.
the faculty who are teaching it are using theory and approaches that are based off of the West, and in some cases, the East.
Right.
And so we are not thinking about the Africanization of the lessons that we are even teaching, therefore then allowing...
Even the concepts.
You see. Therefore then allowing the very kind of free flow of Western ideation in almost every aspect of what we do. There are ways, I think, to incorporate what we have learned from other parts of the world, but it doesn't have to be the kind of driving force of what we do. Our culture can lead that, and we can take elements of what we see in other places to help inform it, but not have it be kind of the big T truth, if you will, in how we approach everything that we do. So the media is using a script that they were taught, and they were taught it through universities and faculty who are using Western ideology to encourage the value add of using that approach. So then when I show up to industry, that's what I'm going to carry forward because I've been taught this is truly the best way to do it, right?
I'm asking myself, whether our professors, African professors and faculty members and all of that, whether we have come to the point where we see the critical nature of this, issues that we are discussing here, because each aspect of the discourse can be traced back to education. And so my question is, Nana said, we don't have African universities or African institutions. We have institutions that, look like Africa, but literally using the models of westernized countries. How can we address that?
So I think that actually faculty are acknowledging that something has to shift.
Right.
And in that, though, they are probably being met with some resistance from bureaucracies and other elements that define what academia looks like, right?
And even the funding of all these things.
I was just about to go there. I feel like we are on the exact same page because what then determines the bureaucracy is the funding. And the funding sources say, but this is the narrative we have for Africa, and we cannot view it any other way. And so in order for you to gain funding or to gain access to other resources, you're going to have to tell us the story that we want to hear. So I do believe our faculty colleagues around the continent are saying, this is no longer working for us. There is a challenge, but they are meeting resistance. I think our students that are entering higher education are also saying, I'm seeing things on, a national scale. I'm seeing things on a continental scale. And I'm saying to myself, we could do different. We could do better. But they are also meeting resistance. Even in their peer groups, from their family structures, et cetera, to say, but this is how we've done it and we're okay. Don't rock the boat. And so in that resistance, though, I think is an opportunity for us to garner kind of not only the interest, but the at this point, the frustration of trying to use something that simply is not applying in this environment. And so in part, I think that's through partnerships and collaborations. There are opportunities that are available to scholars who are in the West that may not be available to colleagues here on the continent. In those partnerships, we can make sure those resources get to our colleagues on the continent. There are, and not just resources in funding, but resources in access to literature and libraries, accesses to, just you can name the resources, right? So it's through those partnerships that I think we have an opportunity. In some ways, we almost have to use what the West values as leverage to dismantle the house.
Absolutely. Or even as references and stuff like that.
So if we then start to use even the material that we have been taught is so valuable and start being critical of it in the actual environment that we are trying to use it, it starts to then dismantle its utility.
Right.
So, we have the opportunity, I think, through an acknowledgement that faculty and students are questioning. I think they are looking for a more Africanized way of engaging in education and thought. And I think that we can, through partnerships, can help to encourage that. But moreover, I think we can start to be far more critical and identify just how disruptive it is to continue to apply theory approaches that simply do not they don't apply here.
Right. Prof, let me get your thought on this. One of the critical things that some of us have been, debating is the issue of research and the number of, if you like, PhD students that Africa can raise or can develop. And the reason being that, just like what we've been talking about, the more we know about our culture, the more we know about our tradition, the more we know about our values and our ability to translate that into the younger generation, the better it is for us, both for the now and for the future. But that can also only be done when we've been able to do critical research and come out with, writings that would. How important is research to national development? And this is very, very important to Africans.
It is critical. Again, Nana, in his lecture, gave the incredibly important direction when he said, it's about the questions you ask. What type of questions are you asking?
Absolutely.
What is informing that question? Moreover, what are your intentions for the question?
The questions. Yeah.
Period. And if we don't question the question, right? Or as my husband likes to say, who is investigating the investigator?
Absolutely.
Then I think that we miss out on that very critical moment that research can play.
Right.
So yes, it is about what questions are we asking and who are we inviting to the research table?
Absolutely. Research
doesn't only have to be done by those who have engaged in scientific methodologies and those who have been prepared in that kind of canon. You can involve community members in your research. You certainly should involve the people for whom your research is meant to impact. They should be involved in even the creation of the research that will impact them. And I think that when we not only consider the questions we're asking, but consider the approaches that we're taking to scholarship and research, we then open up, I think, ourselves to a whole new world of understanding.
Right.
So if I am engaged in agricultural research, and I'm not actually talking to farmers who are doing the work in the field. Moreover, I'm not actually looking at scholarship that talks about agriculture, pre-colonial, kind of world, then I'm not really engaged in the context. And so, again, it is the question. And then I think it's the approach that we're taking that provides the more critical approach that we need to then inform the policy. So if we are going to base our decisions off of information and evidence, where is that evidence coming from and who is informing that evidence?
You know, what I'm thinking about is a lot of the research that is done on the continent are funded externally. So if we are saying that research is critical for national development, and yet our governments are not prepared. In Ghana, there have been instances where professors have gone on strike because government have not given them their research allowances. And in most cases, the allowances is even less than $500 for the whole academic year. And you and I know research involves quite a bit of funding. So the question then is, how can Africa navigate around these research issue, which is so critical to national development from your standpoint?
I think our leaders need to understand just how valuable research is so that there can be a pathway.
Can you repeat that statement?
Sure. I will say it slower, in fact. I think our leaders in Africa need to understand the value that research can bring not only to policymaking, but can bring truthfully to having a better understanding of the people you serve.
Absolutely.
And so to that end, I want to actually applaud our dear country, Ghana, through the Ministry of Education, identifying that there is a need for educational research, but particularly funding around it. And having created a new directorship led by Professor Abigail Apoku-Mensah, who is acknowledging not only that researchers need to have access, but how can we do it in an equitable way? And how can we build funders who are right here? And so her work is very critical because it is an acknowledgement that by ensuring that the funders are coming from here, then the messaging around what the researcher or research is going to produce is intended for here.
Absolutely.
Because if I am solely looking for funding from external,
they're going to dictate.
You see.
Absolutely.
And not only dictate, but they are also going to limit what you are able to gain access to. And they are going to, in many ways, then determine if your scholarship is actually valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, they determine that.
They do.
Yeah. Even when you publish it.
Because will it get published?
That's a point.
Is the question. And if it does get published, will it be published in places that are accessible? So if I'm doing research about student affairs here in Ghana, but I'm only publishing it in the United States.
It doesn't benefit, institutions in Africa or in Ghana.
But it benefits me for promotion and tenure.
Sure.
So you have to then think about who is your work meant to serve? And for that matter, again, who is investigating the investigator?
That's true. I mean, I haven't read it myself, but I've heard people say that, there are institutions in America that can tell, that have a foreknowledge of how Africa is going to be like by 2050, because they've invested so much into Africa's research that they're able to tell, use different models to determine how Africa is going to look like, which is... So what you're saying, Prof, if I get it right, is that there should be some sort of innovation in our educational modeling and also funding and all of that, particularly with respect to research, because it's so critical.
Yes.
Interesting. Let's come back to the issue of female leadership.
Okay.
Are there some indigenous leadership, female leadership models that from your standpoint can benefit the development of Africa going forward?
Well, I think that we are sitting in the bedrock of probably the most informed indigenous practice of women leadership. And that's the work around the Queen Mother and how not only she informs the decision-making, but really sets forth a path through her counsel and also through those who seek her counsel. So I think we are actually sitting in a place of great wealth. And that is why I encourage us to draw on that ancestral knowledge. We need to actually talk with those who are doing this type of leadership. How do you do it? What are some of the challenges you have met? In what ways do you find yourself needing to balance being a leader and also being a human being? In what opportunities can we find for partnership? Queen mothers don't do this by themselves.
Absolutely.
And they don't just do it in community with other queen mothers in their regions. They do it across the nation. And so I'm arguing that there is an opportunity through the model of what is right here in Ghana of women in leadership
Right.
to use as an indigenous model.
There's a quote you made during your presentation, and I'm going to read it, and I want you to expatiate on that a little bit. And then there are two of them that I've noted. You said, for Africa to advance and become the world leader it's always been positioned to be, we must develop our young women as leaders. What did you mean by that statement?
Women are at the very heart of society. Without women, you don't necessarily have society.
Right.
And so if we acknowledge that life actually began here on the continent for the entire world,
Right.
we have always been positioned to serve as the leaders
Right.
and directing what really the entire world should be doing
Right.
and valuing. And to acknowledge both what women can contribute to that, but then also acknowledging how women can provide forward thinking and next direction so that it's not a stagnant kind of leadership. It's more dynamic, and acknowledging that there will be constant change, there will be further development, and how can we be flexible and navigate those opportunities.
Right.
So women are at the heart of it, and we are in the place where we already know, because we've mentioned at the top of the conversation, that the youth for the entire world are sitting right here.
Right.
And so if we engage not only women as leaders, but we also engage men to think about the value that women bring to leadership,
table.
you see, so that we then create culture, a cultural shift
Right.
around who serves as leaders.
Right.
And we're not offering deference solely to men as the guiding force.
Right.
So it is an acknowledgement that we must work to support women, but we must also work to educate men around what that support looks like as well.
Right. I asked the question what you meant by that because currently the statistics show that, through this girl affirmative action for girls and stuff like that, a lot more young girls are going to school and to the disadvantage of the boys and all of that, which is another thing that we can discuss later. But you mentioned the 3 R's when it comes to women and young people development to advance in leadership. You mentioned the rejoining with our past, reinvesting in our present, and regenerating our collective future. Could you throw more light on that?
Sure. So I offered a quote from Francia Marquez, who is a Colombian politician. And she talked about this idea that when women speak in politics, they are speaking for their ancestors, they're speaking for the people who are impacted, and they're speaking for those who are yet to be born.
Right.
So she actually gave me the outlay for the very point that I made.
Right.
That if we are engaged in wanting to see not only directive immediate change, but something that is sustainable from a political perspective, the ways in which we engage with ancestral knowledge, drawing on that information that has carried us for many generations, because what we're seeing today is not the first time that it has happened in our culture or in our politics. And then acknowledging that there is an opportunity in what we're currently doing to reinvest in what is most valuable. So when Afua Sutherland talks about this idea of when you have a woman who is educated in a family, it's not just her family who then is receiving the education. It's those who are surrounding her and the work that they are doing in community. And through the arts and culture, she talks about this idea of how we can continue to invest in ourselves. And then finally, when we think about the regenerating of the future, it's more of a collective that I'm arguing, because we cannot do it by ourselves. And in order to help press upon that collective, we have to engage in what our Chicana feminist scholars call is femtorship.
I love that term.
Instead of focusing on the more traditionally used mentorship. That there is something inherent in how women engage in sharing information, how they engage in leveraging resources, the ways in which they think about community that then you can use to learn from and teach you how to apply it. So it becomes more of a collective instead of I'm just going to go out here and lead on my own by myself. And that's the kind of forward movement that I think we should be encouraging, much like the organization that you are heading right now. It's the idea that youth are not only empowered, but how can they kind of harness and bring that that energy and that kind of drive together so that they can inform what happens. You can't do it by yourself.
You know, sometimes, you know, when you engage colleagues and we're discussing these issues, one of the challenges we have is that in as much as you want to see these things accelerated, you still are operating within a context whereby majority of the people, especially in Africa, as we're focusing on, seem not to appreciate the speed with which the world is advancing. And therefore, the need for us to, you know, also be a little bit more, if you like, you know, a little bit more upbeat in terms of pulling a lot more young women, a lot more young youth from the lower level to the upper level and all of that. You still have people today who still think that the woman's place is in the kitchen. What can we do? You are not a Ghanaian. I mean, your husband is a Ghanaian, and I'm sure if one day you brought your children here and some of them happen to marry a Ghanaian who doesn't want to go to America, he'll be here. And if this man happens to be the type of person who wants to, you know, still be in the village, he will not do it, but his relatives may want your grandchildren. Hey, come on. What can we do, Prof? Is it through education? Is it through civic education? What can we do?
I think it's through what you've proposed. Education, civic education. It's through our religious communities.
And it's not only in Ghana.
Oh.
All across the continent.
All across the continent. It's in our religious communities. There is a, just as there was a shift that led us to believe that patriarchy informs our religion.
Right.
There can also be a shift that allows for us to understand that that is not true.
That's true. Yeah.
At some point, as human beings, we decided in what I refer to as the Abrahamic religions, Hebrew, Islam, and Christianity, that men were the guiding force in how religion is passed, how it is studied, how it is worshipped, and those types of things. And a place like Africa, where there is a true value in not only religion, but in family, it's almost truly intertwined. Whatever that shift was that we made to decide that men get to lead, why can't we just simply make a shift that decides that doesn't make any sense? Solely. There should be some male leadership, sure. There should be some women leading as well, sure. There should be some youth that are leading for sure.
Absolutely.
There is, I think, a very great fear in change.
Yeah. Always.
Always. And so you have so many world leaders, not just here on the continent, but around the world, who have given their service, who have created great wealth and value in what they've offered, but are not willing to pass the torch. You're serving in your Senate seat at 85 years old. You're serving in your MP position at 80 years old. You're serving as president or prime minister at 90.
But Prof, they say that experience is always the best teacher.
There is experience.
Yes.
But there's also innovation and an acknowledgement that I have served.
Yeah.
How can I then prepare the next generation?
Yeah.
Because when that knowledge goes or that experience goes, then what will we be left with?
Right. Well, my buildings will be there.
You see.
My money in the account will be there.
And that's it.
My family will show that my father was a president. How about that?
I mean, that's all we'll have. but what will the nation have?
Yeah.
And so I argue that because we are afraid of change, we hold very fast to what we have accomplished and are thinking that the next generation will serve as our competition and not as the vehicle to help actually continue to move whatever your platform was that you worked so diligently on. If we think about even the civil rights movement of the United States, if the youth of the 1970s did not get involved in what needed to truly change in the United States, particularly for African Americans, but I would argue for a vast variety of individuals across the United States. If the youth did not get involved through the Student Nonviolent Committee, or if the youth did not get involved through the various campus organizations to identify this just isn't healthy, it's not safe, we need to be able to have a more advanced way of thinking, we need to have rights, then I can't say where we would find ourselves even today.
The status quo would have been maintained.
So there is, I think, value in teaching the youth and bringing forward individuals into opportunities. And those individuals don't solely have to be men. They should be
a mix. That's true.
And to answer your question around, kind of the viewpoint with regard to where women should be.
Right.
I think that goes back to an argument that I will make around family structures not being open to change.
Right.
That if a family is only defined by the man working and the woman staying at home with the children and other household expectations, then we are limiting ourselves and thinking about how much value the man can bring to nurturing his own children.
Right.
And how much value the woman can bring to being able to go out and venture into new business and capital and thinking about advancing the family. So when we limit ourselves to thinking in a very singular way about how a man or how a woman should operate in a family structure, we are limiting our family actually. And we are limiting the wealth that we can gain. So it is a challenge, but I think it's one that can be met with an actual cultural shift being led, in all honesty, by the youth.
So I'm going to ask you two more questions, and then perhaps we can bring it to a close. One of the key things that have been one of my inspiration is, whether it's a nation, institution, or whatever, its ability to turn obstacles into opportunities. If you look at globalization and all the, the implications of all of it with AI and all of that, one can quietly and conclusively say that Africa is in a disadvantageous position. Now, in terms of technology, take, for example, internet. What comes to Africa is now some countries are 3G when others are. From where you sit and with all your travels, academia, experience, and all of that, how can Africa turn these so-called obstacles and barriers to its own advantages and opportunities?
Well, technology and AI and all the like are being done from a Western-centered perspective solely.
Absolutely. They have more data on Africa than we do on ourselves.
So I think the obstacle is acknowledging that we may not have access to all of the resources that the West is claiming to be the most valuable process to get to the end goal. But we actually do have resources that allow for us to think more globally and probably quicker than the West allows for. Through coalition building, through partnerships, acknowledging that if we partner with technological companies in Rwanda, here in Ghana, and we start to explore and think about, the ways in which we shared messages through drums, is there something inherent in how that is done that then applies to technology?
Agriculture, for example.
So I'm naming that we actually have the resources. We don't have the resources, though, that have been named as being valuable. But we actually do have the resources. And so if we are truly Africanizing the way that we think about it and informing technology through an African lens, then we start to then question, is technology in the way in which it's being promoted the only way? And is it the most valuable way? So we do have an opportunity to acknowledge what we already have here, think about coalition building, actually engage in sustainable partnerships that encourage us to draw on what are the ways in which we've always done these things and how can we then advance them in a way that allows for us to communicate in exceptional ways.
Right. Prof, I from our conversation and our discussion so far, I get a sense that there's a great deal of hope for Africa. And there's no doubt about that. And being an academic, you probably have alluded to the point that there's a lot more that Africa can do to be the next, go-to of the world. Are you a bit concerned about the slow pace of Africa really making the African unity, into bringing it to fruition in terms of movement of people and all of that? Are you concerned? And I'm asking this not from a political standpoint, but from, academic, from all its implications.
I am concerned because of what history has showed us.
Right.
When we have leaders that call on a Pan-African approach, we then have external forces, as Dr. Ama Atu Edu speaks about, that try to then influence what we are able to do. I think what we have to acknowledge is there is a history behind that. What can we continue to learn from that history so we don't allow it to repeat itself? We, through the younger generation, taking leadership opportunities, not only politically, but community organizing in various African nations. We have the ability to draw on our own power to make these significant changes and to see how, if we come together, we are much more of a force to be reckoned with than we are separately. So yes, I am concerned because of what history has taught us. However, I am, I think, encouraged and truly enthusiastic about what will be. Not what can be, but what will be. Because our youth are already doing it.
Absolutely.
They're already doing it. And so they will continue to press forward. They will meet resistance. They will meet bureaucracies, yes. And they will meet people who are wanting to join them along the way. And so I remain, I think, encouraged and acknowledge that I do see a way forward through us building those coalitions, acknowledging the importance of sustainable collaborations, but seeing ourselves more as one body than we are, as being powerful as one body, than we are individually across the world.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you to make your final, remarks in that camera. But before you do that, last Sunday we looked at a very interesting subject. Maybe I should say a question. And the question was, can African women leadership, be the catalyst for Africa's development and global peace and security? What are your thoughts on that question?
Oh, da. The answer is yes.
Absolutely, I know. But what makes you so confident?
The women leaders that we have already seen do this work impeccably.
Right.
From Sierra Leone to Namibia, from Germany, even the UK at the time. There are examples of women brokering peace,
Right.
who have been able to sustain peace,
Right.
who acknowledge that it's not just the security of the countries for which they are leading, but it's the security for an entire region or an entire nation, an entire continent. And so I think that there is much to be learned, but because we don't often value what we have seen women do, the media in particular doesn't even cover what women have done. So they're not even telling the story for that matter. Then we don't get a chance to learn from what they have not only done, continue to do, have taught women coming behind them to do. I think that there is I think that the questions are important that we're asking, but maybe it's time to stop asking the questions and just getting behind the women who are doing it.
Right. Say that again.
Instead of asking the questions,
We should get behind the women who are doing
get
it.
behind the women who are already doing it.
Right.
We should bring in our resources to help support the effort that they're doing instead of constantly questioning, well, should we be?
Right.
Can they do it?
Right.
Is the appropriate time? How many of them should be doing it? Right. They are already doing it.
Right.
And so if we already have the ears of the people who can help to make that change happen, because we're simply asking the question, to stop asking questions and say, hey, everybody, we're all now generating.
Good. We should have a second round of this conversation. Trust me. I don't know when next you are coming to Ghana, but I'm going to keep in touch.
We will make it happen.
Anytime you're in Ghana, we're going to have a second round of this. Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Prof, this is your camera. And this conversation, as you have seen, I've tried as much as possible not to focus on Ghana alone, but to look at it continentally, because that's the focus of this institution, Africa Future Leaders Institute of Global Affairs. Our mandate is to help, raise and empower a lot more young people across the entire continent so that we can change the narratives of Africa. So in your parting message to the young people of this continent, what have you got to say in terms of their preparation for the next decade with all the barriers and opportunities that are available to them and all of that? As a mother, as an academic, as a teacher, as an influencer, what have you got to tell the youth of Africa from the bottom of your heart?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Colleagues and friends, I will say to you that often we think of changing the world as almost insurmountable, or that it will be quite a heavy lift to make. If we each simply do our part, we have the ability to actually see that shift come. You are experiencing life and asking questions and thinking about what your next step should be. In that process, lean very heavily on what you want to offer this world so that you may engage with your actual purpose. Through that purpose, and you focusing on doing your work and encouraging others around you to live in their purpose and do their work, by each of us doing what we are supposed to do, called to that very purpose, the shift and change that we are looking to see worldwide, we actually will be able to see it. I think it's important as you continue to engage in the work that you are doing and the work that you hope to do, that you acknowledge those who are helping to support you in doing it. Nothing that you do in this life, you will do by yourself. And so, how can you bring others with you and encourage others in the process to continue to move forward?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Professor Candace M from the United States, who have visited Ghana. And we've been privileged to have her have this conversation with us in this studio. My name is Emmanuel Deytumi, and I'm the Executive Director of Africa Future Leaders Institute of Global Affairs. It's been an honor coming your way, and we look forward to having you join us in another conversation. Thank you for watching. Prof,
thank you.
It's been an honor.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for coming, and this is awesome. I'm looking forward to the second round.
God bless you, and God bless your organization.
Amen. Amen.